Deep thinking, a different way to see yourself. Rules for you, not for me. Double standards rarely begin as open contradictions. They emerge quietly, often justified as necessary or practical. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Humans appeal to a universal moral law when they feel wronged. We expect fairness instinctively, even when we cannot fully define it." His observation suggests that we recognize injustice the moment it disadvantages us. The difficulty begins when that same standard applies to ourselves, and we quietly look away. Maybe the issue is not dishonesty, but selectivity. First, double standards appear when an action is called wrong in others, yet becomes understandable when it is done by us or our side. Second, double standards protect identity, as we defend our side even when it contradicts our principles. And third, loyalty begins to outweigh principle. We measure behavior not by the rule itself, but by who happens to break it. What shifts is not the standard itself, but our consistency. And that quiet shift reshapes our moral ground. So now, what if you asked yourself, do I demand fairness only when it benefits me? Have I changed my standards depending on who stands before me?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Who profits from my life? We wake up, wash, eat, and step into the day. We make choices, complete tasks, and move through familiar routines. Charlie Munger once said, "Show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome." His point was simple. People repeat what is rewarded and avoid what is not. Systems do not need force when incentives are clear. If daily life follows predictable patterns, then someone may benefit from their repetition. Maybe the issue is not control, but the way our habits align with existing incentives. First, what feels effortless to us often strengthens the structure behind it. Second, many systems are built to reward consistency. The more predictable our habits become, the easier they are to measure and monetize. And third, repetition normalizes direction. When rewards accompany routine, behavior stabilizes without conscious decision. Over time, comfort becomes compliance. We may believe we are simply living, while unseen incentives quietly shape the outcome. So now, what if you asked yourself, have I considered that my routines may strengthen someone else's system? If I changed one routine, whose gain or loss would it affect?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Do systems shape my character? We often think of character as something personal and self-directed. Yet much of who we become unfolds within systems we did not design. Michel Foucault once observed, "Power is everywhere, not because it embraces everything, but because it comes from everywhere." His words suggest that influence is rarely dramatic. Systems can gradually shape the kind of person we become. They operate quietly through structures, routines, and expectations, shaping more than just our behavior. The shaping rarely feels forceful. It feels normal. First, systems establish incentives. What is rewarded begins to guide attention and effort. Second, repetition forms habit. What is practiced daily slowly becomes character. And third, institutions define limits. What is permitted feels reasonable. What is not permitted fades from imagination. And over time, adaptation becomes indistinguishable from choice. And we may find that our convictions have quietly aligned with the structures around us, without us ever consciously choosing them. So now, what if you asked yourself, which parts of my character were shaped by deliberate choice, and which were formed by the systems I rarely question?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Am I choosing or being shown? We often assume that what we see each day is simply there, but much of it is selected, arranged, and repeated without our awareness. News, posts, recommendations, these do not appear by chance. They are filtered through systems designed to hold our attention. Over time, what we see begins to feel natural. And what feels natural becomes something we rarely question. Without noticing, our view of the world starts to narrow quietly. Perhaps what we see is more shaped than we realize. First, selection becomes reality. What appears repeatedly begins to define what we think exists. Second, repetition creates familiarity. What we see often starts to feel true, even without reflection. And third, absence becomes invisible. What is not shown slowly disappears from our awareness. Over time, we do not just receive information. We begin to live inside a version of the world that has been arranged for us. So now, what if you asked yourself, how much of what I see each day is actually chosen for me? And what might I be missing that never appears at all?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Who made these rules for me? Many of the rules we follow each day were never chosen by us. They appear through habit, expectation, and repetition. We learn them by watching others, not by agreeing. Over time, they begin to feel natural and unquestioned. We rarely stop to ask where they came from or why they exist. Without noticing, we begin to follow them automatically, as if they were always part of how life is supposed to work. Perhaps we follow more rules than we realize. First, repetition creates acceptance. What we see repeatedly begins to feel normal, even without explanation. Second, questioning feels uncomfortable. We avoid asking why certain rules exist, because it may disrupt what others expect. And third, responsibility shifts away from us. We follow without deciding, assuming the rules must exist for a reason. Over time, we stop seeing rules as choices and begin to treat them as something we are simply expected to obey. So now, what if you asked yourself, did I choose these rules or just follow them? And if I questioned them, what might change in how I live?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Is convenience choosing me? Convenience often begins as a simple improvement. It saves time, reduces effort, and makes daily tasks easier. At first, it feels like a benefit we choose. But over time, we begin to depend on it more than we notice. What once felt optional becomes expected. We reach for the easier path without thinking, and without realizing it, convenience starts to shape how we act, decide, and move through our day. Perhaps convenience has shifted from a tool to a guide. First, it reduces effort by default. We choose what is easier, without asking whether it is better or meaningful. Second, it narrows our range of action. We stop considering options that require more time or attention than we give. And third, it weakens awareness. When everything becomes easier, we notice less about how we choose. Over time, convenience no longer supports our decisions, but begins to quietly influence and direct them. So now, what if you asked yourself, am I choosing what is easy or what is right for me? And if convenience disappeared, how differently would I act each day?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Does it know me better than me? The content we see often feels surprisingly accurate. Videos, posts, and suggestions appear to match our interests. Sometimes it feels as if something understands us. But this understanding is not based on who we believe we are. It is built from what we repeatedly do. Clicks, pauses, searches, and time spent. And without noticing, these patterns begin to shape what we see and reflect a version of us we may not fully recognize. Perhaps the algorithm sees patterns we overlook. First, behavior becomes identity. What we do repeatedly begins to define how we are categorized and understood. Second, awareness is limited. We may not notice how often we return to the same types of content. And third, feedback loops strengthen. What we engage with is shown again, reinforcing the same preferences. Over time, we are not only observing patterns, but also being guided by them in ways that feel natural, but are not neutral. So now, what if you asked yourself, what version of me is being reflected back through what I see? What version of me is being shaped by what I see?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
Who is using my attention? Attention is often treated as something we freely give and control. Herbert Simon once wrote, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." His words suggest that attention is not simply available. It is limited and easily shaped by what surrounds us. Yet in a world designed to capture and hold our focus, attention is rarely neutral, and what we choose to notice may be guided more than we realize. Perhaps the issue is not that we give attention, but how it is directed. First, attention is captured, not chosen. We are drawn to what is designed to engage us, often without awareness. Second, repetition builds attachment. What we see frequently begins to feel important, regardless of its value. And third, benefit is uneven. While we spend time and focus, others may gain influence, data, or profit. Over time, attention becomes something extracted, rather than something we intentionally give. So now, what if you asked yourself, when I focus on something, who benefits from my attention? Am I choosing what I see or what is shown to me?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper.
What is this habit doing to me? We often think our future is shaped by big decisions and turning points. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. His words suggest that small actions are not insignificant. They accumulate over time and form patterns that define who we become. Because habits feel ordinary, we rarely question them. What seems small today may quietly shape our future. Perhaps the issue is not habits themselves, but how little attention we give them. First, repetition hides impact. What we do daily feels normal, and its influence becomes harder to notice. Second, comfort reinforces patterns that are harder to question. Familiar actions require less effort, so we repeat them without reflection. And third, small changes feel unnecessary. Because each action seems minor, we delay adjusting what truly matters, Habits quietly accumulate, often without being fully noticed, and they begin to shape outcomes we never consciously intended. So now, what if you asked yourself, what habit am I repeating every day without questioning it? And where is that habit quietly leading me over time?
What would you honestly say? Let's keep going a little deeper. If you took a moment to reflect, that's already enough. See you in the next one.